Good evening. Welcome to Print London's Mastering Lithography Tips from the Pros series of talks featuring Canadian master printers who work in lithography. It's great to see so many viewers from across Ontario and further afield. Great to see you here tonight. I'm Jocelyn Gardner, founder and chair of Print London. And on behalf of our collective, I'm pleased to welcome you here to the second talk in our series. Tonight, artist and master printer Otis Tamasauskas will be sharing his work with us from his studio in Gananoque, Ontario. Before we begin, in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, we'd like to acknowledge that the land on which Print London gathers is the traditional territory of the Attawandaron, Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, and Lenape peoples, who have long-standing relationships to the land, water, and region of southwestern Ontario. The local First Nation communities of this area include Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Munsee Delaware Nation. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations of Turtle Island. Before I introduce Otis Tamasauskas, I'd like to note that this series of talks has been made possible by a generous Community Arts Investment Plan 2020 grant from the London Arts Council and the City of London. We also acknowledge our gratitude to Satellite Project Space, with whom we partner annually for our summer programming. This evening, Brian Strine, Otis's friend and filmmaker, will expedite Otis's tour on video through his studio, while Print London committee member Cindy Talbot will be helping to facilitate the Zoom event and Facebook live streaming. Cindy will advise on how to best have the best viewing experience. Over to Cindy.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Cindy Talbot and I'm the Vice Chair of Print London. I have a few technical housekeeping notes for those of you who are joining us on Zoom. If you haven't already, please mute your mic and turn off your video. If you're joining from a laptop, you should see a toolbar along the bottom of your screen where you can click the microphone icon to mute and the video icon to turn off your video. If your toolbar isn't visible, just hover over the bottom of the Zoom window where you see me talking with your mouse and it should pop up. And then just click on the video and microphone icons to mute and turn off. If you're on a cellular device, tap your screen to bring up the toolbar, click on the microphone icon and the video icon to mute the sound and turn off your video. For optimal viewing on your laptop, you need to select the speaker view. So in the upper right-hand corner of your window, you'll see view. If you click on that, select speaker view, then whoever is speaking will show up large and everybody else will not. And lastly, we'll be fielding questions during the presentation for Otis to answer. So we're going to do these by way of a chat, and Jocelyn will kind of facilitate those messages to Otis. So you can find the chat box by clicking on the toolbar that I just directed you to. There's 3 dots with more below it, and then you can click chat. You'll have options to send the chat just to one person or to everyone. We're going to ask you to send the chat to everyone so we avoid duplication of questions. And lastly, if you're viewing through Facebook Live, you can type your questions into the discussion right below the video stream. And our moderator, Goshia Martinia, will pass the questions along to Jocelyn by way of the Zoom chat. So I think that's everything I have. Jocelyn, I will turn that back to you.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce tonight's guest speaker, Otis Tamasauskas. With an artistic career spanning decades in Canada, which you can read about on the screen, Otis is a force to be reckoned with in the world of printmaking. He has helped to shape Canada's print landscape as an internationally recognized artist, as well as through his work as a master printer and as an educator. I first met Otis in the early 80s at Queen's University, where alongside his colleague Carl Haywood, he imbued such excitement and passion for print into his printmaking classes that as a student, one couldn't help but fall in love with the medium and remain in awe of someone who believes so firmly in the power of creativity, color, and the magic of print alchemy. His highly energetic, experimental approach to his work spilt over into the print studio, and his generosity in sharing his knowledge has inspired numerous printmakers across this country, many of whom are in turn carrying his teaching forward. Otis's experiences as a master printer would likely fill books on the subject. Tonight, he has promised to share some of them with us, but also to take us on a tour of his studio, where he continues to produce work at a feverish pace. Over to you, Otis.
Anyways, it's great to have everybody here, and I'd like to thank Print London and Jocelyn especially, and Brian for doing this. Thank you so much, Brian. And this is sort of a temporary studio. I have been evicted from my larger one that was more industrial. So this is actually a store that sold clothing, and it was a tourist store also. So I kind of made it work for myself at this point. And I have a much smaller press than I normally work on, but I've done most of my work for the last 2 years on this Paraga Press. And I think people themselves know Paraga presses because they were designed and made in Canada by Emil Carpy. And all I get is really a lot of bad publicity and criticisms about Paraga presses, even on printmakers networks and chat lines. I hear people just chastising these presses, and they don't quite get it. Emil made this press in 1971 for a Czech artist called Yuri Laducha. And he needed a press to continue his art production, but he couldn't afford one. So Emil obviously put together the cheapest press that artists could afford. And I purchased this press here for $400. Now, where else are you going to get a press for $400? But a Paraga press. And it, to me, is the stock car press of the world. I can flick this press around and I throw it in my pickup truck. I do demonstrations all over Ontario with it. And even though the bed looks a bit bent, I still work on it. And over here, we have images that were done in North Adams, Massachusetts, which are much larger. And I'm just debating how I'm going to cut them up because they're much too large to store now. And I'm at that point in life where storage is becoming very important. Here, if Brian can do a little scan, we have a lot of print banks, which are the flat files, and they're basically just laden with prints. If I opened one, they'd be scared. Oh, this is Sean. That's a Sean Rudman. But there's prints and prints, of course, everywhere. But we're not going to dwell on those. We have other things. We have other things to get on with. I'm trying to loosen up and trying to figure out how I'm going to approach this talk. But I do want to start with the idea of lithography. Stone lithography has been my real impetus in my life regarding making art. And for some reason, I got involved in collaboration with other artists, something that I swore I would never do in university. I thought probably working for another artist in the print medium to me was to compromise my aesthetics. And I swore, and I jumped up and down to the class I was in, that I would never do that. And it just turned out I was the only one in the class that ended up doing that. So a lot of things happen like that in life. And but anyways, I don't have a facility for stone here, but I took the opportunity to grain a few, and there's just no question about it. I just sort of love the idea of drawing on a stone and the spontaneity that a stone, and then the receptiveness of the stone is so incredible. and sensitive that it just picks up the most incredibly fleeted and fine line. I mean, that's a difference in painting and probably printmaking, is the fact that the stone has such an incredible memory and you can get such delicate fleeted marks. And also I love the physicality of the stone, that you could go into it with a blade, you can scratch, you can go back over it. And again, you could take, say, an instrument as sharp as a blade, and you could draw. Again, the stone is so receptive. I found that to be something that just absolutely seduced me into the medium of stone lithography. Best described, I think, I worked with an artist at Open Studio, and his name was Yves Gaucher, and he was from Montreal, and he was quite a monumental painter, but his career also started in printmaking. And he was going to do a commemorative print for the AGO for his retrospect. And he came into the studio and he looked at the stone we grained down for him, not unlike this. And he made a few marks and he just went, wow, this is the most sexiest surface in all of art making. And, I kind of wondered what he meant by that. I mean, that's being seduced into the medium. I mean, obviously, there was something about that. And then he said, those young punks out there now in the art world, they don't know nothing about how sexy this surface is. And, he kind of won me over with those sentiments. But his art was unbelievably painful to print. I mean, he would mix two blues that were probably one iota away from each other, and we couldn't tell the difference, but he could. And then he refused for us to use the blues till we put them on the windowsill for 1 month, and then look at them and see how the color faded. This is what kind of specialist this guy was. But anyways, with a bit of drama here. Stone can be drawn on, it can be pushed, it can be smeared with a piece of vinyl, it can be moved around, it can be drawn again. Take some risks and chances, and then the sorcery begins. And actually that is Eugene Delacroix, probably around the 17th century, who said that. And it hasn't changed. That excitement is still there. So these are the things that really drew me into lithography. And of course, a great constituency of people also kind of helped me in that area. But let me read something that I always sort of presented lithography in my first lecture at Queen's University. And the idea that the stone, that was basically found to print in the 1793 by Alice Zennefelder, and how lithography took over from intaglio, especially for recording events and disseminating information, like printmaking obviously has an incredible history and civilization. It changed civilization through the printing element of it. But anyways, this is the part that always, it doesn't get any better than this to be a lithographer. And I think most of the people that met me would probably agree. A French politician during the revolution speaks in an inspired tone on the subject of lithography. The end of the world is near. The well of the abyss is gaping. The beast of the apocalypse is loose. Even the stones speak and recount to the eyes of the entire world the triumphs of the French armies. And this was a technique that the French used. They would put Eugene Delacroix out in the field and he would draw immediately on a stone, and they would pull off 1,000 prints and send them back to Paris. And the next thing you know, they had funding for the war against England. Lithography, discovered by a Protestant, deals the ultimate blow to religion and good morals. It is the real invention of Satan. Well, now that doesn't get any better. I mean, talk about all this tragic black and all this rebellious attitude. You have to try lithography. And then John Ruskin, who was sort of a cultural guru in England, claimed, John Ruskin was once quoted, that no lithographer will cross the threshold stone of his home. All lithographers should be buried under the stones they live by. Incredible. I can't even begin to say, where did this stuff come from? And why did people like respond that way? Because they couldn't cope with how giant the invention was. Their minds couldn't probably grasp it. But anyways, my beginnings began, I think this is one I found, and I didn't print it. And it was printed by Brian Kelly at the Open Studio. And this is a shot roughly around 1971 or 72. And believe it or not, this is a portrait of me back then. And Brian was an incredible artist who could depict scenes very quickly and very competently. And on the side, on the flank, is a picture of George, who was an American draft dodger who hung around the Open Studio frequently, and we all talked, and it was a bit of a community there. And here, the drawdown bar is an actual Paraga Press that Don Holman had basically designed with Emil Carpi at that time period. So Brian was quite prolific, and I always enjoy looking at his work. Here, now we're going to move to some prints that I printed with Don Holman under his auspices. He taught me a lot about printing, and he was very patient with me and spent a lot of time. So he definitely qualifies as one of my big mentors in my life. This is John Gould, who was a very well-known artist in the 60s. And he even had a television program on how to draw. This guy knew how to draw. This is the real deal. This shows you how receptive lithography is, especially to the crayon that I was just messing around with over there. John Gould, he knew how to work up textures and tones, and the tonal stretches are in this is the real deal. It's quite fantastic. This is a self-portrait of John Gould as Don Quixote. Beautiful lithograph. This is a portrait by Carl Haywood. Now, once Carl sees something that's so magnificent, he's going to try to outdo it. Now, this is a screen print portrait of Carl Haywood. Very heroic. And the funny part here is that it's a screen print with about 8 printings. For every shade and every tone, there was another printing. Where in John Gould's print, it was just one printing. But Carl just loved doing that. I don't know, he was quite an imp when it came to making prints. This particular one here, I'm going to hold. I'm very proud of this print. And I did quite a few for, this is Jules Heller, who wrote a definitive book, Printmaking Today, and was one of the deans of art at York University and the section of York University in the 70s, in the early 70s. And I obviously was influenced a lot by Jules Heller, because those blends and those hot off reversed images, the positive and the negative really enters my vocabulary of print. This is another artist I enjoy printing for. Leonard. I couldn't find if I printed so many of them, you'd think they'd be all through this house in this studio, but there isn't. I couldn't find any. They're really buried really well. John was a very playful artist, but he knew how to draw the hair off a frog's back. And this particular print he dedicated to my son, Leaf, at that time, who is, not to scare anybody, I don't have a son called Leaf. Aiden's name middle name is Leaf. Then we move to a more of a playful situation. I'm not sure. There's no real chronology to this, but this is something that I enjoy doing. And Harold Klunder, who is a very kind of open and experimental painter and printmaker, wanted to do a collaborative piece where I worked on one side and Harold worked on the other side. And of course, you could see the shaped stones, which is blasphemy in lithography. Most people will always want to put their 1-inch border of gum arabic and do their artwork in it. I could never fathom that. I found that a bit too restrictive. And once I found out that you could print the entire stone, that was a statement in itself. And I've always relied on the footprint of the stone to be in my work, because I felt that that made it like a true, genuine lithograph that people might get the feel of the weight of the stone and things like that. But Harold, in my opinion, was a very important printmaker in Canada. And if you believe that your life can be changed in 5 minutes, Harold is a good example for me, because I had these sort of aspirations of doing abstract art. My work at university was quite illustrative and maybe a little boring. But when I got to Open Studio, I tried to change it a bit and work with abstraction, but it wasn't going anywhere and I had no confidence. But when Harold walked in and started working with Nick Novak, and I looked at what he was doing, it just took me 5 minutes to figure out that this guy has confidence, he has the freedom, and he has just the ability to move things around and in a very tumbling and free way, which influenced my work, I think, immediately. He wasn't very popular at that time period. I'm sorry, Brian. Another print that I printed, and this one is for the person that started the print shop in Newfoundland, Don Wright, with Heidi Oberheide, and I printed for them quite a bit. I made maybe, I'd say, for Don about 25 editions, and for Heidi about 2. But this is a good example of stone lithography and how I try to steer artists into working freely, using touche on a brush and then using acid to follow through, and the acid would bite through the brush work that was put down, and you'd get this incredible texture that was very mysterious. And it worked for Don's work, and Don put it a chine clay in the middle, which was a woodcut. So at that time period, it was quite bold, and it was pioneering, in my opinion. I did show some of these prints to a very, very, very dear friend of mine, and she said, "Why did you pick those prints? Can't you pick more exciting ones?" Well, just wait. No patience there. But anyways, Don was fantastic. I loved working with him. And this is a print that was solely, I don't just print lithography. I also work in woodcut a lot and intaglio. So I've done a bit of each end of it. And this is another image by Don Wright. A lot of my prints are scattered all over the place. And like a lot of printers, they sell their prints to survive. They can get a little money for the prints, which is nice. In my case, I never did get any money for them, but other people probably enjoy doing it. And the printer's proofs are very valuable. A lot of collectors find them that they're the ones they want to buy. And I remember at Open Studio in the early 70s, a lot of the printers proofs and the studio proofs would disappear. Just nobody knew who was taking them, but there was value, and we didn't have security, so quite a lot of them disappeared. Now I'm going to move fast because I do have stories to tell, and I also have a lot of my own work to show that will definitely put me to sleep. But working again, in the collaborative sense, this is an artist I didn't really know till he arrived and he explained what he wanted to do. And I was just excited by what he wanted to do. And this is an intaglio print on copper. And it's the famous painting, The Stonebreakers. And I think it's Millet that was the painter. But the artwork, the painting, was destroyed in the Dresden bombings. And so it doesn't really exist, or who knows, it could be, Nazi stolen treasure somewhere stashed. And Louis thought that he wanted to use this sort of number system to bring out the Stonebreakers, the shape of the man clubbing the stone and the boy holding the basket. Beautiful image. And I got the students involved, and it gave me a chance to teach also, where they did a lot of the wiping after I did the Bonneterre. And I love the idea that Louis Jacob had this sort of need to find artwork that needed some sort of resuscitation, or he had to bring it back to life. His aesthetic kind of revolved around that. He looked for very obscure people who never really got their due in the culture and art environment. And then he would work with their premises and information and try to give them the credibility they needed. I really appreciated that. And this particular one, you could go on YouTube and punch in Otis Tamasauskas and Louis Jacob, and you're going to be appalled. I think I got death threats for doing this one. This is the drawing on a stone, and I put the stone in deliberately, the shape of it, so that we could see it. And then I was requested to break the stone through the press, which again echoed the idea of the stonebreaker. And yet the stone was destroyed, and also the painting was destroyed. And we did this on YouTube. And I did get a lot of bad flack for breaking that stone. But in the name of art, I mean, Louis took the stone and he exhibited in many of his installations. And then we printed the stone in all the different stages in the broken element too. It's quite exciting project, I thought. I definitely couldn't fall asleep on it. And then Louis wanted to do it in polka dots. So I'm gonna step back because the closer you get to this, you do not see the stone breakers, but do you see them? And that was quite a feat to do. I think we spent a week trying to get this perfect and to get those dots so that they were absolutely crisp and clear. Took a lot of struggling. And I used my favorite, I always find this to be in my oeuvre, my favorite ink, which is the Reflex Blue. I think a lot of people will say, yeah, that's all he does. But anyways, that was a very beautiful print. Louis was so excited when we did that one. Here's another conceptual print with John Leonard and Peter Klisnik. Peter is quite a conceptual artist and sculptor. Very, very good teacher too. He passed away probably about 8 years ago. And John Leonard wanted to do his usual mark making, like he always has this sort of pop idea of the lips and these super gestures that are very loose, and he breaks through them. And he knows that Peter is going to get the stone after. So Peter got the stone. He said, "What is this? That John Leonard again. The pop art stuff. It's not art. I show him." So he said, "I'm going to take a piece of his art and put it over here." So we talked about it. I said, we can cut that right out with a razor blade. And we used MacTac all over it. And I cut the cross out of the MacTac with the blade. And then I put nitric acid in it, and it burnt away the old image. And then And then I had the image printed already on a piece of paper. So we razor cut it exactly that out on the other image. And I copied it on a copy machine. And then I transferred it over here on the stone. And that was Peter's statement, was right here. I found it like, wow, I love it. Just love it. The way he stole that piece of John's and put it over here. You couldn't get better thinking than that. Oh, here is my another person that I aspire to be, Carl Haywood. And this is an actual print that I printed for him. And it went into this sort of portfolio called Botanica, that deal with flowers. And it was three countries that dealt in it. I think the Netherlands, Canada, and Hawaii. Not a country, a state. But anyways, this was something that I did for Carl. And he is a very difficult person to print for, because he makes fun of my registration all the time. And he just says, get your eyes checked, Otis, because you're off like usual. And I usually am. I'm not very good at registering. This one here now, this is our Canadian hero 2 years ago. This is Geoffrey Farmer, and he represented Canada. I'm just trying to establish some credibility. So somebody says, hey, that's a nice print. Represented Canada in the Venice Biennale. And Geoffrey, I learned a lot from him, and I really respect him as an artist. I didn't at first. I said, what the hell? What's he gonna do? And so I said, come on, we're gonna do a print together. And he walked around the studio and he looked at all the glass. It was all scratched up from all the razor blades. Anyways, so Geoffrey found the fans that we use at Queen's for drying the lithostones. And he said, what are they? And I said, they're fans. He said, they look absolutely exotic. Can you imagine? Like, I mean, you've never seen the paraphernalia that a printmaker uses. And here it is. I mean, they do look weird. And he said, they are gorgeous. I want a print of them. So we decided we would do the print, and we printed on all these very, very sensitive Asian papers, Gampies and papers like that. I don't have a very good handle on all of them, but I really enjoyed making this print for Geoffrey Farmer. Then we move over to an artist that I enjoy his work very much. And this is a BAT, and this is Stephen Andrew, who is a painter printmaker, but started off in printmaking, and a very disciplined printmaker who basically every other day would go to the AGO and go through the archives and leaf through all their Japanese printmaking. And this particular one was a 3-color print. And Stephen wanted me to mix this Japanese olive green, which I said, hey, right on, because I love Japanese prints and I study them all the time also. So we did have something in common. And I mixed the green, and he said I thought I nailed it right away. But, of course, that's my perception. He said, oh, no, you better put more yellow in it and all that. So we struggled with that green in here. And what he was trying to do was take something very mundane, like these guys are working in a park with leaf blowers, and try to make it something very mysterious. Very amazing artist. And then I move over to part 2, which was, now you can see the leaf blower, and the same idea. We had to get those colors looking like a Japanese woodcut. But these are drawn on litho plates. And then we moved to his portfolio. There was about 7 or 8 of them. And this was an amazing series that I printed for him. And these were from the collection that was given to Ryerson 10 years ago, or maybe 8 years ago. No, not even that, 18. So that would have been 13. Yeah, about 8 years ago. I was right. And this was a collection. It wasn't the Getty collection that was given to Ryerson, but it was all the 60s photography that was done in the United States. And this is the Vietnam War. And I printed this for him. He just loved these. And I got the entire set, which I donated to the Agnes Eddington for a tax write-off, of course, because that would get me a little, a little purchase power. But he also said, Otis, take these prints because, I don't do this for money. And he said, if you could sell them, please do, and pay yourself back. And so I really appreciated what Stephen did. Of course, I did go out of the way and do all the work and the paper and all that. This is from a television or a video screen blast, and he wanted it to kind of flare. And this again was 4 plates. And believe it or not, 1 plate is this green line. It had to be there. And, so as a printer, I'm the guy that didn't like printing for people, still don't. But you're there to amplify the artist's voice. That's how I found it. In my case, I tried to amplify it a bit too much. People would get a little weird. And this was to be a lens flare. And we messed up really badly on this one, but he still liked it. He cut me some slack. Not many people in custom printing cut you slack. Funny the contrast. It was Fenwick Lansdowne cut me slack too. And he was the famous person who did birds. And he could draw a bird better than anybody I ever met on a lithostone. And we printed the lithostone in 3 colors, and we got the breast kind of off each time. And it was from a yellow to a pinkish red, and it kind of varied. And then I said I was going to be honest with him, because you can't try to fool the artist. If there is some sort of anomalies in the work, you have to tell them that, which I learned the hard way, because I remember trying to scam an artist back in the 70s, and I got caught. Yeah, by staggering the worst prints underneath, but they did find them. Boy, that was the roughest thing ever. But it was his fault in the end, because he told me he wanted them lighter. He never defined what he wanted. And Fenwick came in and he saw. I said, check those prints out, because there's a variation in the colors on the breast. He said, what? No problem. It's a varied thrush, anyways. And I said, oh, this guy's got to be cool. And so for Stephen, I said, Stephen, you see that hair? Well, that came in on the film. And the rest of that is acid tint, like just bang. And that came in from the student darkroom. Oh, man. I used to have to use the darkroom at school. And things were never up to snap. And, you have to clean all this stuff. And I kind of blew it. And I was very upset. And Stephen said, no, you do get hairs on a lens. Everybody will testify to that. So this one did make the cut. And let's see the last one. But like I say, there's a lot more of them. And this one is when the monk in Saigon burnt himself. This is sort of what do they call that? But anyways, so there were a few other ones. There was the assassination of John F. Kennedy and the guy who shot him. So it was a very interesting one. Then he did a video of it, but he couldn't release it because the foundation wouldn't allow him. I'm not sure where the status of them are, but the complete set, which was quite beautiful, is collected by the Agnes Eddington. This one here is, of course, I've probably seen it, Sherry Boyle. And these were these are the first lithographs she did. These are 210. And I tried to keep her in the spirit of Queen's University at that time. And we used a lot of shape stones, and it would give the work a bit more edge. And she's very playful. I thought she was quite good, very, very playful. She didn't quite like them at the beginning, but then she realized there was a purpose for them too, that she could disseminate them, because there were editions of 20. Okay, well, I'm just going to move these over here, And I guess I was going to show the Jacqueline Hoang Nguyen.
Wow.
And I'm going to show this one.
Oh, I want to stay with that.
No, get back here. And this is, I really enjoyed working with him 2 years ago. And that's Brendan Fernandez. And this is sort of African sort of sculpture that he put in with ballerinas and dancers. He was one of the most fun guys to work with. Okay, we're going to move there. Another Brendan Fernandez. Take a quick shot of that. And I'm not going to show these because these are Brendan's also. And they're all about waltz steps in the King Louis XIV's court. And we did a whole thing on dancing and it was fun. And then this one was printed at Queen's University. And Brian Hode, who is one of the teachers and technical, I think he's the supervisor of technicians and things like that also, but he does teach. And he bailed me out on this when I wasn't doing a very good job. And I had, I think the wood was kind of all worked and things. But working with Kim Dorlin was very exciting. And he's a very he's not upcoming, but he was new to me. And I tried to, kind of win him over by showing him a couple of licks, how you cut wood. Oh no, he was terrific. He had his own force and his own way of cutting. And he wanted his images to sort of reflect that time period of Edward Munch, who I love his work too, but he loves Edward Munch. So these were the prints. So now we're going to move to my work, I guess, right, Brian? You think so? Do you think I should show something like a demonstration? Yeah. Okay. One way I work, I do the preparation ahead of time, and I work on a silicone paper. So I'm supposed to share tips, so this is a tip, master printer tip. And so I do all my work on this silicone paper outside using water, toner, and soap so that I get this kind of reticulation. The plates cost a fortune. Oh my God, like one litho plate, like this here, I went ahead and prepared that, but I'm going to do this really quickly. I usually take the litho plate that's going to become my matrix for generating the images and put that down there. Oh, how incredible how time just moves when you're having fun. I thought I was going to fall asleep because I'm so old. But anyways, Brian gave me the signal. So I would put the piece of paper down on the plate. And I probably, if it works, I will make an image out of this. I will print it and people could follow it on Instagram. And this will take a second. I just have to, because, give me I think Joshua should cut me some slack because I'm in my 70s and I don't move as fast. So
you've got as much time as you want, Otis, as much time as you want. We love what you're doing.
I'm really getting tired here. Okay, no, just kidding. Printmaking just absolutely excites me and revitalizes me. And I put my rubber offset blanket that I had to buy, and I'll run it through my stock car. It's good. No. Brian's worried I'm going to crash all the prints and ruin all the work. But no. And I would probably do a couple. I think I should go a little more. Yeah, and I would come back. All the lithographers know that this is a type of transferring, and it's been well documented for over 200 years, but not with the silicone paper, and not a great transfer. I didn't get the pressure right, but you see what I mean? Now I have it on the, usually there's nothing left on this, and now I have the plate, which I'll heat gun, and all the information stays on the plate. And I can take it into any direction I want. I can use gum arabic or I can use silicone, which I would use silicone. But people could write me if they want to know about that. Okay, let's get to my work because that's going to be incredible. Okay. Getting thirsty too here. Okay, so now I did pick some prints out. A lot of these images, I did get this back years ago, and it came back from some obscure event for about 20 years it was missing. And this print was made in 1982, and it was called Diamondback. I have an enormous fear of snakes, so I kind of sometimes deal with them, and I like the idea of putting them on a stone. And this is a very organic stone that's shaped. And I found these up in Crow Lake with a very good friend of mine, Craig Johnson. And we ended up with about 150 these organic stones that we pulled out of the ground. One of my hobbies is looking for where real lithographic limestone comes from. And we do have pockets and quarries in Canada, and the stone is incredible. And this is one of them. But in it, I love the idea that the fossils started to show, the quartzite in the fossils. And so there's lots of blends and pretty flashy. And then the other idea here is I picked this one out to show for the nature of lithography. Sometimes when I do this collaborative custom printing, master printer stuff, which I don't like to call master printer, the artists never really reach what I want them to do. And they don't, I try to push them, but some do and go way further and much, much better than I would ever do. But the idea here is that look at the way the brush strokes are just carried into textures. Unbelievable. So much like Jack Bush would say, give it a bit of whammy. And so it just gets that whack, and wow, you get this incredible range and spontaneity of texture. This is done quite a while back. This one was I picked some prints out to talk about and storytelling, but this one we took to the university for the Southern Graphics Conference. I was doing kind of a whole multimedia project, and we're doing stone lithography, plate lithography, a video going on. And Mark Bovey, God bless him, he came and helped me. But we moved the stone out of the van and moved it up 3 flights of stairs up to the Ohio University print area. And one of the people attending the conference was one of the biggest printmakers you ever met, who was a master printer. Now, I mean, his name just escapes me because I'm having that senile moment, Brian. But anyways, he said, you guys are crazy. And we said, no. But anyways, Mark did a lot of the work on that. I did a lot of the art. Mark did a lot of the printing. I did a lot of the art. And again, this was printed in my studio in Priceville, Ontario, a long time ago. And again, you could see my need for printing the entire shape of the stone. And this one is called Mellow Mood Induced by Wine. And the washes and the tonality, the transparencies, and the sensitivity of the stones, all there. And we've all been there, mellow mood induced by wine, I'm sure of it. Again, up in the Saugeen area where I lived for a long time, I did have this sort of touch with the natural surroundings, and everything was about the river and floral growing on the banks of the river. So a lot of the work had kind of a naturalistic thing. This is the one I was going to stop because it was a tight one, and it was a great story. And I guess I'll try to catch it. There's salmon here, cats running, bodies laying, and myself jumping out of my 5th floor apartment in Aberdeen, Scotland. That's how I felt after a few of those Scottish beers, and opening my window and seeing the cats and trying to get at the rotten fish that were laying in the alley that just smelled and smacked. So I said, I have to do a print. But when I got to Aberdeen, I went up to the print shop, and the guy said, oh, how are you? And I said, I'm Otis, and I'm going to work here. And he said, oh, Otis who? And I said, Otis, I wrote you guys. I'm having the show across at the Cultural Center with Carl Haywood and Richard Sewell. Oh, yeah. I see your name here. I said, I want to do some lithos too. He said, lithos? Oh no. He said, oh, we got all the stones are being used. I said, what? What do you mean all the stones are being used? You have hundreds of them. And I noticed some outside. He said, oh, no, 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 those can't be used. Those are endangered. They are in a construction site. You can't go get them. I said, well, I would just pick one up. No, you can't use it. And so I was going, how am I going to print? Like, I mean, that's what I came here for. It was supposed to be the best print shop in the entire world, according to Print Magazine back in 1980 something. And it was called Peacock Print Shop. And I noticed the stone holding the door, like a little stone like that. And I said, can I work on that one? And he looked and he goes, I don't see any. Oh, yeah, go ahead. So I kind of showed me where to work, and he went home, and I said, I'm going to do some printing. And I said, I am going to mess this guy's mind up. I'm going to take that little stone and I'm going to print it and make a big print. So this was my attempt at making this big print. He came in the morning and he came over to me to see how I'm doing. And he looked at the print and he said, who gave you the big stone? And it was worth my entire trip there. I just was laughing my head off. And he said, that's a crackerjack. The way those Scottish people talk. And I said, wow. And all of a sudden I was part of the gang. You know, I could go drink scotch with them and all that. But those stories go on forever. This one, now I'm heading to Newfoundland, and I did a lot of stonework in St. Michael's print shop. And this one's called, Does a Shoe Look Like a Whale? It did have a little notoriety back then. I think this was 95. And then I moved into more serious sort of Newfoundland work, where these were called the Newfoundland Stories. And this is called Ponies and Trout. And of course, Newfoundland back in the 17th, 18th century, basically nobody owned land except the merchants, and everything was sort of ruled by the Elizabethan kind of era. And this print was to depict sort of the feeling of Newfoundland and maybe its antiquated days. And I always put that horse in that Brian just went by, and that's a Newfoundland pony. So we're going to move quickly, running out. Then I did a series on sort of the people that disappeared right off the planet, the Biennials, who were like the first probably genocides of any indigenous nation in Canada. And so I spent a lot of time dealing with the Biennial spirit and the idea that they're really not gone, but they're everywhere. I even simulated those book spines to read that they did have a history of medicine and things like that, but that never came to fruition. And of course, that's Shauna Divitt, Mary March, a portrait of her. So these were done in 208, quite a while back. And again, sort of symbols, and I have to move again because I'm going to be thrown out of these. So, and then sort of more of a grander piece that kind of reflects sort of the ruggedness, the plain, the terrain of the landscape, and then yet the flora and the fauna. I definitely tried to represent that with the crown seal of the Charter of Newfoundland. And then we moved to, well, you know, we can have part two also. You know, Otis can come back, I guess. This is a great story. It really is. I thought this would be the big one. This is the biggest stone they had at St. Michael's. So they were all waiting for me to get on it because nobody would touch it. It was much larger than this. And I said, no problem. I put it on the lift, and the lift was swaying from side to side. And I moved it to a table and grained it down. And I started, and I've heard even a couple of my students worked on it, and they did better than I did. But anyways, this was a homage to the Newfoundland pony that I heard a lot of history about, and how they became kind of a very extinct species of horse. And so this was all to depict, these are horses in wounds. And the idea of these footprints is walking on earth, because the horses were used in mines, in the iron mine that they, in Bell Island, they had Newfoundland ponies. And I walked the land, and this is where I got the feeling that I had to do something about the ponies, because I walked all through Bell Island, and I was getting creeped out because there's mine shafts everywhere. And I found an old sign to a hotel, and it had a horse with one eye on it. And then I came back and I said, I really was creeped out by that visit to Bell Island. And somebody said, oh, you should have been. Those horses were put in the mines. They were born in the mines, hence the wounds. And they never got to see daylight and sort of the darkness and, you know, the play on the light. They were blind. And I said, no, that sign makes sense. It was this black head with one eye, really kind of reverberated in my system. So I had a show there about, I don't know, 10 years ago. And these are sort of, again, two prints that go side by side, big story. And again, it deals with the Newfoundland ponies and sort of the entrails of the world, you know, of the earth. You just sort of go down into the dark, and you get symbols of religion and things that the Newfoundlanders were mostly Roman Catholic in that. And so it was a Susanna Woolidge phoned me on CBC radio and said, could you tell us that story of the Newfoundland ponies that you're like, why you're doing all that? And I told them, I said, I had to do it because I was creeped out. And then 2 weeks later, she aired the story. And then she phoned me 2 weeks later. She says, Otis, the telephones have been lighting up like Christmas trees. People have been phoning in from everywhere, all through Newfoundland. And they want to do some sort of exorcism on the land. And also there's like all these people that want to put the spirits down, and it's awful. But there was one miner that phoned that actually worked in the mines. And he said there were no Newfoundland ponies. And I said, what? After all that? But she said, the way they say it in Newfoundland, never be, no problem at all. There was one Newfoundland pony in shaft number 4. So I said, well, if there was one Newfoundland pony, I knew it. And so anyways, that was the story there. And I'm almost done with sort of these really old things. But if people want to see new prints, I guess we're going to have to come back another day, Brian. And this one here I did, this is my first toner using the toner image I did way back, and it had to, the subject matter was the fact that I was in a canoe accident with a very dear friend, and we were like washed down the Saugeen River in a canoe that kind of just, we lost it. And so I had to make a print of it, and this one was shown at the Contemporary Museum in Montreal, and the curator said, I never seen a print so exciting. And I said, I didn't think it was, but it definitely had a good graphic punch to the face. And there's all sorts of elements that I have been talking about for the last 40 minutes. And then I moved to what I like about printmaking is the fact that it's time exposure. So you print something, you could change it, and then you print it again. This would have been the first one I should have showed here. So you have three time frames. This one was actually 7, but the Agnes Etherington collected the other 4. But it goes through so many time changes. And the idea here is that you're growing with the image, and you're also, you know, you're imbuing it with more ideas. And this particular one is like a loss of memory, like how memory disappears. And I think a lot of people have probably use that as a subject matter. And then we go to my shape stones again, and these were done at the Medusa Center in Quebec City. I happened to be the first visiting artist there, and I dealt with the worst stones they had because they just sort of piled them in a corner, and I thought, well, that's ridiculous. I have to try to print these things and rescue them, not unlike Louis Jacob. God, but anyways, enjoy doing them. And this I won't talk about because it's another technique. And I got lots of techniques to speak about. And this is a good example of how I draw on a litho stone, very spontaneously. I don't like to get too rigid. And I use geometric symbols, and I try to maybe create a bit of an illusion of safety in this sort of dome, you know, sanction. And this is called the touch of Artemisia. And there's the hand touching, which is a little tighter. And then this would be another shape stone that I would have done based on Fading Forest series, things that relate to the wilderness and all the hiking and fishing I do. And also I try to put reference of orchids in work. These are done with touche. And this one has a good story too, but I won't go into it because it was basically on a blank stone, and I used soap and water, and everywhere I painted with soap, I'd roll it up and it would take onto the stone. And then I would maybe print it, and then I would take acid and change the texture and print it again, so that there's this reduction element to it. And then I moved to more contemporary, just a little more contemporary, work on Gampi paper, beautiful Gampi paper bought at the Japanese paper store in Toronto. And this is my fragmented selection black glass bowl. And I had this idea of working with glass. And it really stemmed from a very sad topic. And but it seemed to morph into a lot of other printings. I can talk about that later, but I love this. Probably has about 15 or 18 colors on it of different plates, but all different subtleties. And my love of Japanese printmaking. This one's called Japanese Wave Series, Whale Noise. It's called Whale Noise, and I did a lot of work pertaining to when the tsunami hit the shores of Japan. I felt like, you know, this is something that affects me, and I love Japanese printmaking. And so I tried to bring that element into the work also, just not my own. And this is called the Japanese paper maker, which has to do with mapping. And right here, you could see the sort of shogun image. But again, the plates were all shaped and printed. And then this is a natural worm mapping. I call it worm mapping under bark. And I thought they were the first mappers. And then I put in kind of a geometric element to it that kind of reflected mapping and the geometry. And this again is the another one of the Japanese wave series, Ancient Land and Water, it's called. So there's a lot of, and here's the idea of the tsunami, the wave. Kind of, I guess, very literal, but you'd have to contextualize it from probably the artist's point of view. And then, again, a lot of people know I have this kind of hobby, a diversion of printing on old maps, and I really enjoy it. And I kind of bring in my own, what do they call it? There's cartouches, are the drawings on the corners of the map. Like this would have been a cartouche. And so I kind of like the idea that I'm just going overkill and overboard. And it stimulates me to keep playing. This is an old map of Ontario, but I add all sorts of, I take a lot of liberties, I think, to add all sorts of symbols in them. But I notice now that a lot of people are printing over maps at flea markets, and they're like selling them as doilies almost. So it's starting to turn me off. And then this would have been from my show at Open Studio 2 years ago. And it's called Repeating Echo. I did a lampshade that I photographed, and then I played with it, and I tried to get this kind of sound acting in it, and then everything that goes on top of it is to reverberate all the imagery so that there's shaking going on. A lot of fun doing it. And then this one here I pulled out. This is a good one. So if you can hang in for it, you made it. No one's going to guess this one. This one is, do you know, Brian? come on, you hang out. Brian has print intelligence. That's why he does such an amazing job. And this is all the Great Lakes piled up on top of each other. It's Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, and I'll show them all to you now. Right, this is all done on Saint Armand paper. Whoa, man, that guy made paper 20 years ago. Like really something. Not like that anymore. And here we go. Here's one of the lakes right here. That's Lake Michigan. And these are done on dye bond, which is an aluminum foam core. It's got a foam core in the middle, but they're fantastic structures. Now people are painting on them, but I levigated them and used them as litho. They're crazy. And here's, of course, Lake Erie. Looks like a rabbit or something. Fantastic. I went to school somewhere over here. That's Lake St. Clair. So Windsor's got to be somewhere. Yeah. Where would Windsor be? Somewhere over here. I went to the University of Windsor, so this is a very special lake. I want it to look kind of toxic. I don't know if that happened. And then this is Lake Ontario. Wow, talk about the abundance and the richness of Ontario. It's all there. I'm from Bellwoods Park, Trinity, by the way, where the police rushed yesterday and dispensed the encampment. That's where I grew up. And my daughter phoned me, Raya, and she said, Dad, they totally came in and they overreacted. And there were so many police taking down 20 people who were in camp. Oh, man. But anyways, that was my park. And here's Lake Superior. And I picked a very ferric color because of the iron thing. But yeah, we're almost done. And in here is Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. That one turned out really nice. I got all those washes and textures looking like little underground streams, and very beautiful, I thought. And then I think I could stop there because I have all these other ones to go. These are my print constructions that are scary, and I don't think anybody has to see them. But these are 7 feet, and all that kind of this heroic things. But I don't think anybody needs to see them. And these are sort of newer ones that I did with big washes up in Club 60. That's in Halliburton that I get to work at sometimes. But yeah, there's enough. I think maybe we could stop there because we went over time. I knew
Otis,
yes.
we could listen to you all night. We really could.
No, I have to. I'm old,
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's so much. There's so much there.
No, I could talk all night too, by the way, but let's shut it off there. And if anybody likes that, I could do it again, but I could do all
right. We think we'd love to bring you back. You're the wealth of knowledge that comes out of your lifetime of, being immersed in print is so present in every piece of paper that you pick up. And your unique approach to everything. You didn't talk about the new ones because we haven't really seen them, but with the little kind of edged cuts that are kind of circular almost, like as if the plates maybe are clipped, like that has become, there. Do you want to speak about that?
Well, of course. It's like, come over here. We got prepared. We knew you'd ask that one. This is where I work. And I work here on these big, I do sort of horseshoeing sometimes. They bring in horses in the back and I put shoes on them. So this is where I work. But no, this is sort of a really nice way of working with my plates, because when I did stone lithography, a lot of people said, what are you going to do when you're 60? Are you going to move those stones around the way you work? And they were right, because I had to get 2 new knees about 2 years ago, and I got a hip replacement 3 months ago. So they were right. The stones took a toll on me. So I always knew that I could do plate lithography. So when I do those cutting edges on plates like this, and I have them laying everywhere, it's a way of reduction. It's a way of like pretending I'm using acid, or I'm reducing the way I work on a lithostone. But also I'm giving the rectangle or the square a shape, the same as the footprint of the stone. So I'm trying to give it a character that I could relate to. So I work on these tables using incredible chisels. I've had these for probably 30 years. And I chop away like so. These are getting dull. And I use a wooden mallet because obviously if you have these incredible Taylor acorn chisels that are very expensive, and I just chop into that. And then I use these things I buy at Princess Auto. They're called punches, and they probably cost like about $11 for a set of 8. But the punches, they're all metal, and there's different circumferences to them. And I get my what you call dilation or my reduction. So this is a way that I almost simulate the acid bite. The reduction process of lithography is done like that. And 15 years ago, when I started doing this, I did a demo in Saskatoon, and I thought it was so bad. I thought that'd be the last time I ever do it, but I showed it to students. And Jacob Simcoe called me a few months later, and he said, you showed that technique, and all the students, they're doing it. They love it. I said, I can't believe anybody would want to do this to a plate, but because I miss working on a stone and using acid on a brush to reduce the image, I found some very primitive, primal way. Look at this chisel. This is my favorite, but I would never hit this chisel with a hammer. That would be sacrilegious. And this chisel is really quick, and I can get up. But also I could go right into the image. It's like a sculptor would. And I find that to be a very reductive way. And of course, if somebody was better equipped to handle detritus and creativity, they'd probably print these things. But no, you see? Does that explain it?
There's a real physicality to everything you do, though, Otis. You just mentioned sculpture, but
that's
the gestures
too, because nobody likes that nowadays. Like, people don't want to see the physical element of it. They want to see something very kind of slick and very, kind of smooth. And, I was brought up in the sense that you were very visceral and your work should be very emotional. That's only me. I love all sorts of minimal work, perfect work. My value judgment for all artwork is kind of Kantian. Immanuel Kant is good. If it's good abstract, good realism, if it's good pop art, but it has to be good. And I love it. That's just sort of my criteria for it.
Lovely.
Yeah.
There's some questions coming in, Otis. There was one from Morgan Weatherspoon, but when I read it here, it's all about what you just talked about, which was, the country.
Okay. I'm going to write her name down. Okay. I'm going to Instagram her later.
We'll send you the chat.
Definitely.
Otis says, Otis, that was so wonderful. Hanging out with you, even online, is just a joy.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I'm flattered. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. David Bobier is saying, hi, Otis. David Bobier from the past.
Okay. I think I had a beer with him way back at that hotel when we went up to, was it not, what's the high school there? Not Beale? Not Beale. What's the high school? Beale?
In London,
we all got together. I think Jan was there and Bouvier came. I went to his show in Kingston way back, and I think it must have been 83 or so. He's amazing printmaker.
Yeah. Okay, well, Michelle LaRose is asking a technical question. Where do you get your plates?
Oh, good one. Okay, this is a good one because Jan, my partner, felt really sorry for me because I was buying my plates out of the aluminum siding company where they do houses, and I would buy, it was called flat stock, and you have to make sure that one side is not painted. It's silvery, and then you have to sand them, which is the awful part, and sanding them is so much work. You have to sand them with a 150 grit, but I did a lot of them, and they're much thicker. So Jan broke down and said, I feel sorry for this guy. And she ordered a whole bunch of them from Tackage in New Mexico. And they came like within 3-4 days. They're incredible, but the price is very expensive. It's changed, at one time the litho plates were very cheap, but now, wow, a ball grain plate. Oh, but Jacob Semko, who's at the in Saskatoon, I enjoyed working with him a lot, and he always used his own aluminum plates. And he told me, just get one of those orbital sanders and put a 150 on it and grain it down, and wash it with a bit of grease magnet. I wash all my plates with grease magnet, and that allows for better contact with the drawing and allows for better contact with whatever you're doing, like silicone or gum arabic. You could take your choice. You could go waterless, or you could go with gum arabic, I guess. But yeah, that's all I do is I wash it with grease magnet. But you can dilute this, so it's a really strong detergent, but there's no odor, and everything I use doesn't have an odor. Hide that from me.
There's also
no.
There's also a question about your silicone paper up earlier, so I can't see it right now.
It's a flooring. It's called Green's undercoating, and it's better to find a white one. That one's got a little yellow on it, and it throws me off. But the original roll I started with, and it was a fluke. It said silicone paper, and I thought, oh, it won't receive ink. That'll be great. I'll use it for tabletops. And it didn't work. It received ink all right. So I tried drawing on it with toners and things like that, and it released really beautifully. But you can, if you're doing crayon work, it's not going to work. But anyways, I use it a lot because it suits what I do. Yeah, I might write it all up one day, just publish it. I was gonna do that in a couple of months. Put a few papers out on.
That would be great. I think people would be hot on that topic, Otis.
Yeah.
There's some shout outs to you from Ann Unger. Hello, Otis, from the 17th.
Ann Unger was in my first class. How could that be? Now she's going to say Otis must be really tired, because that goes back to about 1975 or 6. Yeah, Ann Unger. And I did see some of her work on Instagram. I really enjoyed them. I think they were kind of dry. They were dry points, I think. And I met her
showing in our Print London top exhibitions too. Brian Ho says, hi Otis, wow, cool talk. Great to see your space and see so many familiar names on here. Happy printing, everyone. And then Roger Sutcliffe. I'm sorry.
Oh, right. Roger's he's incredible. Roger's got to take over for me. He's already getting better than me. He's really interested in printmaking, painting, but he knows how to analyze printmaking. He's got very, very vast print intelligence. Matter of fact, all the people you mentioned do. I put that word up at a lecture just recently. Print intelligence.
Well, he says, wonderful, Otis, to see the joy of printing, and so inspirational. So some great feedback here.
Fantastic.
Jenna Kush, sorry if I've said your name.
Jenna, where's she? I'm gonna get her. I remember helping her with those amazing etchings she did. She did these like plates that were copper, and we put them out on the back of the loading dock at Queens, and we mopped them with this Enviro etch. I mean, can you believe it? Enviro etch. It actually was some kind of copper sulfate with a bit of Sanaflush in it. And she made this giant owl, I think. And it was beautiful. I didn't think it was going to work, but man, she made it work. It's beautiful.
Well, Jenna says, thank you for this, Otis.
Well, at least they should say thank you, Otis, for not forgetting.
She says,
one step from Alzheimer's.
Is your studio in your basement? How is the ventilation working?
There's no ventilation at all. It's behind Brian. There's a fan here. It's just behind Brian. but I don't use toxics. I use only Estisol 242, which is a vegetable organic cleaner. And if I'm forced to use something very strong, then I do it outside because I can't take the fumes. And I always try to do that with students, is try to minimize as much as I could through the cleaning products. And that's another story I could tell about the cleaning of lithography plates and stone that I think Mark Bovey picked it up too, that you don't have to expose a student to volatile organic substances when they're doing stone lithography. And I thought Sparkbox was going to do some tests with etches too. They were going to use natural teas and boiled bark and stuff like that to etch stones, which I thought, wow, that sounds great. But yeah, you don't have to be always in the breach of harm making prints, that's for sure. And
so, that's so important now. Now that we know what happens. Eric Murray says, amazing talk, Otis. Thank you so much. Brings back so many great memories. Yeah.
I know he wanted to buy my bike, and I'll sell it to him now. No, Eric's fantastic. I loved working with Eric. Eric helped me a lot at Halliburton teaching, and he was a savior for me.
That's fabulous. Michelle LaRose says, thanks for the inspirational presentation.
Wow.
Elizabeth, sorry, I know I'm saying it wrong. I know Elizabeth is part of our group. Engel, has your art theory changed along with your process over the years? Thanks, and nice to see you doing demos and hearing your stories.
Yeah. So my images change day to day. I'm all over the place, and I'm not interested in contextualizing content. I'm interested in what I'm about regarding content, and I like to put some magic in the work as opposed to too much dreary realism. I thought that was an important function of art, was to combat realism a bit and allow people to think outside of that. And so for me, a bit of mystery, and if I could make something interesting happen in the passages of work I'm working with, then I think it's a success. It's like a movie, like if it doesn't have any magic in it, then it just becomes content. So you have to be, aesthetics are important to a degree, I think. But there's so many different camps of art. I don't want to infuriate anybody by saying anything too political. I'll definitely stay away from that.
Yeah, the magic's there though, for sure. Jenna says, thank you for not forgetting. Smiley face. Sparkbox says,
when am I coming? Because I have 2 weeks.
Yeah, you should come and work with us. I just got a grant.
I have 2 weeks payment that Jen got me a birthday present, and I better get over there. I'm sure they revoked it.
Okay. So Jose Claria or Jose, maybe. Thanks, Otis. I love your work. Wonderful talk. Hi from Argentina. So it's Jose Claria. Wow.
God, those Argentina people. Yeah, she could do she's terrific with that tango dance. I remember her at in Miami at a conference. They said us guys up here, we didn't know how to tango, and she was right. We got a lot to learn.
Well, you've got someone here from Iran. Thanks for your beautiful stories about prints. Hi from Iran. It's Anali. I know I'm saying the names wrong. I really apologize, but Anali Vakili.
Wow, that's very special. Thank you. That's very special.
And Ann Harkness says, that was great. Nice to see you, Otis.
Great.
Anna Bass, Queens, BFA 93.
Oh, I know Anna Bass. Of course I do. She did some very beautiful lithographs, and she kept working at Open Studio too. Fantastic. Right. So nice to see some people work.
Yeah, we've got some great feedback here for you. So I guess we'll copy it and publish it for you. It's
Yeah, that'd be
kudos
great.
coming from the rest
Brian
of
and I are
yeah,
getting
the people so far. I don't
We're
see
gonna put
any
it
questions
Okay.
here, so yeah. So I guess we'll wrap up now since we've reached
Fantastic.
8:30. But
Yeah,
I must say,
wow.
Otis, you've been really generous in this tour. It's been
I don't know.
fabulous. Just
Yeah, I can't compare it to anything, so I don't know. But anyways, I had a lot of work and there's no shortage of work, so I'll do it again some other time. I need a break.
yeah, it's totally fabulous. We've enjoyed it so much. And Brian, thank you too for
Brian,
the
And-
spectacular
Oh, Brian, we wouldn't even have this. Fantastic.
the video work. The images
Oh.
have been so crisp that we can appreciate, the details in each print.
Yeah.
Very beautiful. Thank you so much, both
That's
of
because he
you.
wasn't drinking. 'Cause usually he's like-
Happy to have done it. Have me back again.
Yeah, but yes, we're really, really thrilled. So thank you so much, Otis. Yeah,
Thank you.
heartfelt thanks.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll wrap up. I just want to say thank you again
Okay.
to everyone for joining us, for our sponsors, for having, given us the funds to go ahead with these talks. And I'd like to let everyone know that our third talk is coming up next Wednesday, and that will be Pudi Tong, who works out of Open Studio as custom printer there. And we'd love you to join us for that as well. Thank you
try to
so
catch
much
that
for
one,
joining
yeah.
us. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you, folks.
All the people that were watching, I really appreciate that.